In 2009, journalists Rob Walker and Joshua Glenn launched a storytelling and social experiment called Significant Objects. Their hypothesis was simple: a compelling story could make worthless objects valuable. They scoured through thrift stores, yard sales, flea markets, buying hundreds of random objects. Ashtrays, mugs, figurines, kitchen tools, spending a total of $129. Then, Walker and Glenn asked 100 creative writers to invent stories about the items before selling them on eBay to see if the stories enhanced the value of the object. From that $129 spent on the objects, they sold them for a total of $3,612, multiplying their profits 28 times. The experiment has become a case study in marketing, psychology, and behavioral economics, proving that when people connect emotionally to something, they value it much more. As Walker described, stories are a kind of currency, and like any currency, they create value. In this episode, I'm going to walk you through 7 storytelling frameworks you can use to tell great fucking stories for you and your brand. Number 1. First, you have to be a collector of stories. In both your daily life and business, stories are everywhere. Your job is to curate and capture these moments, then connect the dots to tell the story of your personal transformation or a transformational moment for your brand. As Matthew Dix puts it, a story is a 5-second moment of change. Once you've identified your 5-second moment, you already have the end of your story. Then find the opposite, and that's your starting point. In his Homework for Life framework, Dix encourages capturing these moments systematically. For your brand or business, that could mean using an AI note taker to revisit call recordings and pull out story-worthy moments, writing posts for executives in a way that captures their voice authentically, pulling stories from content interviews, podcasts, or casual conversations in your day-to-day work, recording one day in a journal, notes app, or Notion, so at the end of the year, you have 365 stories ready to tell. So build a story bank and don't be afraid to repeat your best stories. That repetition reinforces your brand narrative and makes the stories stick. Number 2, your story starts with why. Once you're clear on your why, the next step is to build a flywheel of distribution that reinforces it everywhere your audience encounters you. Every post, every product choice, every customer interaction should echo that same core narrative. Tony Fadell, known as the father of the iPod and one of the creators of the iPhone, tells a story about sitting in the audience as Steve Jobs unveiled the iPhone in 2007. I remember sitting in the stands watching Steve Jobs tell the world about the iPhone in 2007. It never felt like a speech. It felt like a conversation, like a story. And the reason is simple. Steve didn't just create a script for the presentation. He'd been telling a version of that same story every single day for months and months during development. To us, to his friends, his family, he was constantly working on it, refining it. Every time he'd get a puzzled look or a request for clarification from his unwitting early audience, he'd sand it down, tweak it slightly until it was perfectly polished. It was the story of the product, and it drove what we built. If part of that story didn't work, then part of the product wasn't going to work either and would need to be changed. That's ultimately why the iPhone had a glass front face instead of plastic, and why it didn't have a hardware keyboard. Because the story of the Jesus phone wouldn't hold it together if it scratched the first time you put it in your pocket, or if you'd be forced to watch movies on a tiny little screen. We were telling the story of a phone that would change everything. So that's what we had to build. And when I say story, I don't mean just words. Your product stories is its design, its features, images and videos, quotes from customers, tips from reviewers, conversations with your customers. It's the sum of what people see and feel about your brand. And it all starts with why. Your brand's story is in every single customer interaction you have with your brand, from your product, your visuals, your words, your tone of voice. Every touch point reinforces or erodes your why. Internally, that means the pillars or topics you continuously show up and talk about in your content. For me, that's storytelling and podcasts. For your brand, it might be the music you choose for a video, the fonts and colors you commit to, the words you consistently use. All of them designed to elicit a certain feeling and reinforce your message. And everything has to be intentional and go back to your why. Externally, every single interaction with your audience tells a story. So ask yourself, what narrative does your product or service or experience create? What do you want people to remember you for? What feeling do you want them to associate with you? Once you're clear on that, you can build a content flywheel, a repeatable compounding media engine that reinforces your why at every single turn. Podcasts are a great example. One episode can be turned into dozens of premium content assets, each one telling the same cohesive story from different angles across multiple channels. As your flywheel spins faster, your trust compounds simultaneously. But your content flywheel starts with why. Number 3, stories follow similar shapes. If you study stories closely, you'll find they often follow the same emotional patterns, whether they're told in a novel, a movie, a sales pitch, or a brand campaign. The best storytellers know these patterns by heart. They use them to guide emotion, create tension, and deliver a satisfying payoff. These shapes work just as well for business as they do for personal storytelling. Your product launch, your founder's origin story, a customer success case study, they can all be mapped to the same emotional arcs that have worked for centuries in stories. Kurt Vonnegut, one of the great American novelists, famously mapped out these patterns into simple story shapes. He believed the most successful stories have a clear universal arc. To illustrate, he drew 2 lines on a graph. On the y-axis, I for ill fortune at the bottom, and G for good fortune at the top. On the x-axis, B for beginning on the left, and E for end on the right. From there, he charted the 3 most popular story shapes. Number 1, man in a hole. Someone gets in trouble and then gets out of it again. People love that story, Vonnegut said. They never get sick of it. Think of the Martian or Finding Nemo. In business, this could be a customer story where they face a serious challenge, then your product helps them climb back out of it. The second was rags to riches. The day starts ordinary, then something wonderful happens. The hero almost loses it, then wins it back for a happy ending. In marketing, this could be a campaign showing a small win or near loss, and then a bigger than ever recovery. The most popular arc in Western civilization begins deep in misfortune, climbs towards happiness with a setback in the middle, and ends at off-the-scale joy. This could be the narrative arc for a bold product launch. Years and years of pain turned into a solution that changes your industry. One of the most timeless storytelling structures comes from Joseph Campbell's Hero's Journey, a framework that can be applied for brand storytelling. You see this pattern in hundreds of Hollywood films, from Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, to the last marketing campaign you saw from a brand. The hero starts in an ordinary world and receives a call to adventure. They meet a guide, think Yoda or Gandalf. They cross the threshold into the unknown, face trials, gain new skills, and return transformed. Donald Miller's story brand framework adapts this for your business. Your customer is the hero and your brand is the guide. Your job is to give them the tools, wisdom, and support to win. These shapes are formulas that you can tap into to pull the same emotional triggers that humans have responded to for thousands of years. Whether you're telling your own story, a customer's journey, or the origin of your product, start by finding one of these shapes, then build everything else around it. Number 4, the hook. In the game of attention, the hook is the most important part of your message. If you lose people within the hook, then nothing else matters. David Ogilvy, one of the greatest advertisers of all time, said you should spend 80% of your time on the hook. The rest of your story will only work if that first line opens a curiosity gap and makes them want more. For example, take inspiration from literature. The opening line of 100 Years of Solitude says, "Many years later, as he faced the firing squad, Colonel Aureliano Buendia was to remember that distant afternoon when his father took him to discover ice." It starts at the endpoint and pulls you back into the past, leaving you curious how we got there. That same technique can work for your brand. Start with the outcome, then reverse engineer the path to how you got there. 6 months ago, the company was on the verge of shutting down. Today, we've doubled our revenue. Another way to hook is by starting with action. In The Dark Knight, the first scene starts with a bank robbery. No boring character intros and dialogue, straight into the action. In marketing, this could look like opening your case study within a moment of crisis. On Monday morning, their system crashed right as a $1 million deal was about to close. You can also open with dialogue. Dialogue drops the reader directly into a scene, and humans are wired to pay attention to voices. In content, this could be a customer quote, a surprising question from a sales call, an objection, or a line you recently overheard that instantly sets up the problem. A few tips for strong hooks. Try using a story-based hook by starting with a scene, a moment, or a turning point. Leverage negativity bias. As humans, we're more likely to pay attention to threats, risks, and losses to gain. It's an evolutionary survival mechanism. A hook's job isn't to tell the whole story, it's to make it impossible for your audience not to keep reading, listening, or watching. Number 5, visual storytelling. As humans, we process images up to 60,000 times faster than text. You need to paint a picture in your audience's mind and on their screen. One of my favorite podcasts is called Founders by David Senra. He spends over 40 hours for every single episode researching and synthesizing the ideas of history's greatest entrepreneurs and founders. Recently, Founders partnered with one of the hottest editors in the game right now, Maximize, and it's added a new dimension of elite visual storytelling to their podcast. These trailers not only summarize the episodes in short, but they pull you into each subject. Now, I look forward to watching the trailer just as much as the full episodes, and I end up coming back for more again and again to rewatch old episodes or dive into new ones. Social media is now the new TV, and short form video is prime time. So if you don't have a strong visual hook, you're going to lose your viewer before your real message begins. For your brand, that could mean taking a boring case study and data and flipping it into life with motion graphics, archival footage, and animation. So don't just tell your story, show it. And now, with the introduction of AI video tools, the barrier to entry for visual storytelling has never been lower. You can create images and videos of anything you like with a tool like VO3 with a prompt in minutes. They're not perfect yet, but the quality is improving day by day, which means there's no better time than now to experiment, test, and see how AI can help you turn your imagination into motion and visual storytelling. Visual storytelling can bring your story to life. Number 6, subvert expectations. Pixar's films share one common trait. They subvert expectations. They surprise the audience at every turn. They take what's familiar and twist it into something new. The Incredibles, for example, takes superheroes forced to hide their powers and live ordinary lives. In A Bug's Life, instead of the classic fable where the lazy grasshopper starves, the grasshoppers enslave the ants. These twists work because they destroy familiarity and boredom. They keep us leaning forward, wondering what's next. The same approach can be applied to your brand. Step back and ask, what's expected of us in this industry? What if we did the opposite? Subverting expectations forces people to reevaluate what they think and know about you, and therefore creating memorability and curiosity. A purple cow is more interesting than a regular cow. If you want your stories and your brand to stand out, subvert expectations and be bold. That leads us to our next point. Yes, you shouldn't only be bold, you need to be outrageous. In 1985, nobody knew Tommy Hilfiger. He wasn't a fashion icon or household name. He was just another kid from New York hustling to make his breakthrough. Then came one of the boldest stunts in fashion history, orchestrated by legendary New York advertiser George Lewis. Lewis was one of the most famous ad men of the 70s and 80s, and the real-life inspiration for the character of Don Draper in Mad Men. He convinced Hilfiger to rent a massive Times Square billboard, the kind that was usually reserved for brands that had already made it. But instead of quietly introducing Tommy, Lewis listed his name amongst the kings of American menswear at the time: Ralph Lauren, Calvin Klein, Perry Ellis, and a space left at the end for the fourth name, Tommy Hilfiger. The headline read, "The 4 Great American Designers for Men." It was audacious, and people ask, who the hell is this Tommy Hilfiger guy? Fashion editors, buyers, and customers started talking, and in a strange way, the billboard spoke it into existence. Shortly after, Tommy Hilfiger's brand was recognized within the greats of American designers, as they were able to be bold, outrageous, and insert themselves into the conversation. That's the storytelling skill here. Insert yourself into the conversation and borrow credibility. If you want people to see you as a leader, you have to act like one before anyone else agrees. As Kate mentioned in one of our earlier episodes, novelty is the single most effective way to capture attention. Only something that is truly unique and unexpected can make you stand out. The brain cannot ignore novelty. And Lewis said it best: always sell your work, not merely with total confidence, but with the confidence of a $10 million jewel thief. As marketers and storytellers, one of our greatest skills is the ability to make 1 million look like 10 million. There's an immense power in presenting your vision as larger than life, even if it's not fully realized yet. It attracts investors, customers, and talent towards you. Bold, outrageous storytelling is knowing when to take big, unexpected swings that make your audience look up, pay attention, and remember you. In short, every single one of these 7 storytelling techniques reinforces that story is a multiplier, just like it was proven in the significant objects experiment. So whether you're collecting moments in your story bank, clarifying your why, creating the shape of your story, crafting a killer hook, bringing it to life visually, subverting expectations, or being outrageously bold, the goal is the same. Make your audience feel something. You can start applying them today. Try one in your next sales deck, your next piece of content, or your next conversation with a customer. Then stack them and watch the compounding effect kick in. So go out there and tell your story.